So today we're going to look at how the apostate Christians are the same as the Pharisees. And even Frank Turek has identified himself as a Pharisee. He has. He called himself a hypocrite and said all people are hypocrites and that everyone's a hypocrite. They can't help it. Everyone's a hypocrite. They don't live up to their own expectations, their own standards. Christians do not set their own standards. Frank, I hope you're hearing this. Jesus condemns you as a hypocrite. Not just Frank, but all of you who believe the false gospels. You're in the apostate church, the parallel church. This is the alternative to the body of Jesus Christ, the real church. I'm going to show you again and again and again and save some of you. Here we go. Matthew 23. This is Jesus' long criticism of the Pharisees. If you want to know what a Pharisee looks like, this is the chapter. I'm going to read you only part of it. And a lot of people want to say that those who say stop sinning and obey Jesus are the Pharisees. That's not what Jesus said. Then Jesus spoke to the multitudes and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. That's not what makes them wrong. For he says here, he says, therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do. So first off, he is saying they have authority. They are sitting in that seat. They have authority. He is not undermining their authority because he knows the same thing that Paul wrote in Romans 13 to accept. And yet here it is. And you say sola scriptura. Then submit to the scriptures. Believe it and do what it says. Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities. Period. For there is no authority except from God. And the authorities that exist are appointed by God. There's no other way to slice it. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God. Notice you're not resisting the man in that office. You're resisting the authority that he has. God made that authority. God put that in place. And it says the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God. And those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. So now you understand when Jesus says the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, he's saying they have authority over you. Therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do. Jesus is not going to contradict the ordinances of God as you do. You love doing that. But do not do according to their works. So he says, do what they say, but don't do what they do. For they say and do not do. That's exactly what you, apostate Christians who follow the false gospel, do. You say this, but you do something else. You do not do what you say. You don't do what you say. Stop lying. Yeah? Don't bear false witness. Have you told someone that that is a commandment from God? Then why do you bear false witness? Why do you lie? Don't murder. You even tell that Jesus said you're not even allowed to hate your brother in your heart. Do you? You do. And you justify it by saying, well, I can't help but sin as long as I'm in the body because I've got the sinful nature and I'm not free from it and I'll be free from it after I die. I know the story. I know the false gospel that you preach. It's terrible. It's abominable in God's eyes, is what he says. He says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. He calls them hypocrites repeatedly in this chapter. And yet Frank Turek says we're all hypocrites. We're all Pharisees. Speak for yourself, Frank. If you're a Pharisee, you're a Pharisee. At least I'm glad that you confess it. But don't go dragging all the rest of us into your mire. Just because you refuse to stop being a Pharisee, a hypocrite. Woe to you, Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of extortion and self-indulgence. That's incontinence, by the way. Extortion and incontinence. You can't control yourself. That's what he is saying. That is what you are saying when you say, I can't help but sin as long as I'm in the body. Romans 7:15. And Romans 5 and 6, and even Romans 7 before verse 15, tell you that Christians have had the old man of sin crucified so that we're no longer under the power of sin. We're not to obey sin. And you contradict it in different chapters preceding that. So you've got to revise your understanding of those verses because it's not correct. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they're full of extortion and incontinence. Blind Pharisee, first cleanse the inside of the cup and dish, that the outside of them may be clean also. Which part has sin? According to Jesus' command to the Pharisees here, which part will have sin if they do what Jesus says? The inside or the outside? Neither. Jesus tells you how to stop sinning right here. He tells you how. And you act like you're stupid and you can't understand what Jesus is saying. And yet you yourself say, well, it's about the heart. It's not about the actions, the outside. Right? Jesus says if you cleanse the inside, the outside will be clean. You'll be clean inside and out. Where's the sin? Is it on the inside? Well, no, it's clean. Is it on the outside? No, it's clean too. If your heart is clean, how can you then have actions that are sinful? Tell me how. Jesus says it's not possible. Jesus says if you clean the inside, if you really clean the inside, the outside's clean. If you clean the outside, it doesn't mean the inside's clean. And we're not telling you just clean the outside. We're telling you clean the inside. Stop it. So that your actions follow. That they're clean. Stop sinning. Inside and out. Stop it. Jesus just told the Pharisees that. Blind Pharisees. That's what you are. You're a blind Pharisee. You are. First cleanse the inside of the cup and dish, that the outside of them may be clean also. You say, my heart loves Jesus. I'm pure in my heart. No, you're not. If you're sinning, you're not pure in your heart. Jesus says so. If you clean the inside, the outside is clean. You will not sin. It's not imaginary cleanness. It's actual cleanness, because he says before, he says they're cleaning the outside, and yet they're still dirty, full of dead men's bones inside. It's not imaginary. They were controlling their outside, cleaning it, but the inside still had sin. He says if you can't clean the inside by cleaning the outside, is what he's saying. You have to clean the inside, and then the outside will be clean. But internally, they're not clean. Look at this. He goes on. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. You think Jesus likes hypocrites? You think he thinks it's okay for you to be a hypocrite? No. It's his condemnation of the scribes and Pharisees repeatedly in this chapter. For you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautifully outwardly. He says it's not imaginary. You really do appear beautiful outwardly. But inside are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Notice he doesn't say a little uncleanness. He says all uncleanness. Even so, you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness, and you say you are a hypocrite. and that you have no control over it. Jesus says, if that's how you are lawless. Well, lawlessness, when you sin, you break the law, right? You break God's law. Even if it's not the law of Moses, you break the law. You are lawless. You act as if you have no law over you. Jesus is criticizing those who are lawless. He says, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. So when you say that you have no law over you, you're lawless. That's exactly the definition of it, without law. If you're under grace, you are under law, not the law of Moses. You're under the law of Christ, the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus, which sets you free from the law of sin and death. Verse 29, you act the same way. Well, we wouldn't kill Jesus. If we were the leaders of the Jews back then, we certainly wouldn't have killed Jesus. Then he says, therefore, you are witnesses against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your father's guilt. Serpents, brood of vipers, how can you escape the condemnation of hell? Therefore, indeed, I send you prophets, wise men, and scribes, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, following them around. That on you may come all the righteous blood shed on the earth. Notice it says righteous blood. That's not from imputation of righteousness. It's from righteous deeds that they hate. They develop a whole system because our deeds are righteous and yours are not. And you can't stand for people to see our righteous deeds. So you want to murder us. Just like the prophets. What does he say? Does he say he sent? He says, therefore, indeed, I send you prophets, wise men, and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Assuredly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her, just like you. You kill the prophets and you stone those who are sent to you. You attack, you malign, you slander. If we were face to face, you would murder me. There's murder in your heart. Don't deny it. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. I try and I try and I try to gather some of you together under Christ, but you are not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more till you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.